All right, are we good to go? I think we are. Um, I want to make sure that our presentation is well shared. So, first of all, okay, we are good to go. Perfect. So, I want to say welcome to everybody who is here to learn a little bit about online content. I'm gonna introduce myself in a second, but I have a presentation for you ready about how to create content that resonates for organic growth. And I'll give you context about who I am, which will also help you understand to why the things that I'm saying are so important to listen to, and that they are not just something that is being said, but also being preached by people that I work with. Now, I do know that there's also a Q&A going on through Slido, and feel free to put out any questions throughout the presentation. I have people helping to navigate these questions, and if it is relevant to what I'm talking about at that moment, then I will add to it and give extra context. If it is a question that is less related to it, still feel free to post it, because at the end of this presentation, which is going to take about an hour, we will have a little bit of a Q&A part where we're going to go through a bunch of questions, whether it's a simple question about something in the presentation or anything when it comes down to online content or organic content. So that being said, we have how to create content that resonates with organic growth or for organic growth by me. And let's begin actually with a quick introduction about myself. It's going to be fairly short because I want to focus mostly on teaching, but it gives you context. So first of all, that's my face. My name is Mario. That's my full name. If you ever wonder how to pronounce my last name, it's Joos. I am an expert when it comes down to audience behavior. So I've been spending the past years working with a lot of very large creators, and I have my own research company where we spend a lot of time analyzing anything when it comes down to audience behavior. This is if we see something on in a video, for example, does the audience stay interested in it? What engages the audience? Even recently, we've been getting a lot into neuroscience as well, and we try to do a lot of these things in order to better understand what audiences really want and how they behave to content. I work as a consultant with a lot of creators. So some of these creators that you may be familiar with, some of them not. One of the biggest creators that I worked with is named Mr. Beast. Another creator that I work with is called Stokes Twins. Now, Mr. Beast is I think there is the largest creator on YouTube right now. Stokes Twins are a smaller creator, quote unquote. We we took them from 20 million subscribers, and they just hit 100 million subscribers last week. So these are very large names, but there's also some smaller names that I've worked with. You may be familiar with Jeremy Etier, for example, etc., etc. Um, there's a list down here as well. I myself also make some content. I've got about 300K followers. Now, why am I saying this? It is all because I believe that social proof is very important, and also having the experience shows that what I'm saying isn't just theory, everything is actual practice. All of these things, whether you're going to be a marketeer or whether you're going to be involved within the exact same industry that I'm involved in, everything what I'm going to tell you is able to be applied. So these are a list of names. Let's not go into bragging, let's go into knowledge, because that's really what I'm here for, and that's really what I care about the most. So in this presentation, I want to take you through a total of 4 parts. My goal today is to teach you about interest and how interest is important and what makes people interested. And I know that depending on your expertise, you may be familiar with psychographics. You may be familiar with certain cultural preferences, but that's not what we're going to look at. What we're going to look at, and what I want to teach you, I want to teach you small little elements about how humans naturally find interest in something. And the reason why this is important, and also with the other things that I'm going to teach you, is because if you want to grow organic, one of the most important things is that we understand what do people want. And if we give people what they want, they're going to engage more, and it's going to grow you organically. And that's really what today is going to be about, is that I'm going to teach you base principles and concepts that if you start implementing those and thinking about those during whatever content you make, whether it is paid or organic content, if you start thinking about those and implement those properly, then you're going to be able to grow an audience. So the first part here is interest that we're going to talk about. What generates interest and what do we find interesting? The second part that is very, very important when you're making organic content and when you want audiences to grow is make engaging content. Now, engaging content, I'm going to say this very blunt, it's the most useless word ever. And the reason why, if I tell you, what is engaging content? There's like a million ways to interpret that one. So I want to go a little bit deeper and talk about the exact things that make something engaging. So that's really what I want to talk about. Next up is satisfaction. No matter what we create, even if we catch the interest of the audience, then they engage with our content. And there's a concept called passive and active engagement, and I'll talk about that later too. And that is not alone enough. We have interest, we have engagement, and then we need to make sure that the experience they had with our content is satisfying enough so that they want to re-engage with our content when we do more of that. And that's how you grow. Because it's not just organic growth isn't just about putting one good piece of content out. It's about putting 10, 20, 100 good pieces of content out that makes people continuously engage with you. And the next time you post, because your content was so good in the past, they're going to continue to engage frequently, and that's going to be good because algorithms like that. And talking about algorithms, the last thing I want to talk about is the algorithms. Because most of you have dealt with algorithms before, or you've heard of algorithms before, and if you haven't, then maybe you just haven't been aware of it before. Because algorithms are everywhere. If we think about it, the YouTube algorithm, you've heard of that before, TikTok algorithm, you've heard of that before, and there's multiple parts to it. So even though today all the information I'm going to give to you is quote unquote basic, and I'm saying quote unquote basic because it's a lot more than the basics should be. But we're gonna also go to the basics of algorithms and understand from like, how does the algorithm actually work, right? And I want to give you some new insights that you can work with. So really, this presentation is about me sharing insights and you walking away with it and having a lot of food for thought here. So those are the 4 elements that I want to discuss with you today. That's my goal, is to give you insights in each and every single one of them. Starting with interest. So one of the most important things, and you will hear so many people talk about it, is how to hook the audience, right? Now, the downside is it's not just about hooking the audience. Hooking the audience and catching their interest and making them pay attention is only one small part of the puzzle. But the reason why I have to cover this one, even if there's a lot of people that talk about this, is because it is still important. Because if people don't pay attention, or if you're unable to grab somebody's attention, then it doesn't matter how engaging your content piece is or how satisfied people feel after consuming it. If they don't even give it attention, all the other effort is lost. And that's the reason why we want to cover it. Now, instead of giving you tactics and saying like, oh, you can hook people with these type of words, which are little tactics, they work in one situation, not the other one. I want to really take you through the main ways that humans behave and what catches somebody's interest. Because the way that we can think about this, and I'm going to go through some examples, is maybe you are interested in educational content. Maybe I'm not interested today in educational content. Maybe I just want to see some, what we call brain rot, right? Which is just some random facts. Well, actually, that could be considered educational content. Maybe I just want to see some guy try some crazy challenge, right? So whatever it is, interest can be generated. There are personal preferences. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the main core elements of what our brain does. When does our brain pay attention? So when you make content, here are the 4 things I want you to think about when you create a content piece. Don't just think, I'm going to copy this thing, or I think people have interested in this, you know, or I'm going to Disneyland, so I'm going to make a video about Disneyland. Or my company just did this outing and, you know, I want to film it and show it to people. Right? That's not necessarily going to make people engage with your content. So when you make content pieces, when you come up with content pieces, here are 4 things I want you to think about. And about the question about, are we able to download the presentation? I will send it to I will send this presentation over to those who have hosted this, and then they, if there's a way to distribute it, I can definitely have that so that you have a reminder. Just as a reminder, a lot of text is missing. I tried to keep it as visual as possible. So first of all, when we think about a good idea, and actually I can go to this one. The first thing, and this is why I add a little image. We are naturally inclined to pay attention to anything that's outstanding. And I know this sounds simple, right? But don't underestimate this one. I'm going to take you through an example. I have one creator that I work with. He's got about, I think right now he's sitting at like 5 million subscribers. And he came to me and he said, Mario, I want to make a video about Disneyland. Right. And I was like, okay, sure. How is this outstanding? Because as far as I know, I can just go on YouTube or I can go on Instagram and I can find videos and pictures about somebody that went to Instagram. So if we think about this one, right? Think about each square here or each rectangle here as a post about Disneyland. If you make yet another one, you're amongst these other four. Naturally, if you just look at this image, your attention is naturally drawn towards the middle one. Why? Because it stands out. It is different, right? So, and if you want to go very scientific here, you could say that it possesses a unique quality that the others don't. So when we want to make organic content that really makes people excited and catches new interest, then we want to make sure that we create something outstanding. So in Disneyland example, we don't just go to Disneyland. We don't just go on rides. We make the experience exclusive so that interacting with your piece of content is going to get us something that we couldn't get elsewhere. So this means that in this case of the creator, I told him, if you don't have backstage tickets and you cannot show me some exclusive access that I cannot see on any other channel, this video ain't even worth it. So that's something to think about. If you're just going to do, if whatever everybody else is doing, you're not going to stand out. And then the likeliness of you to have organic growth that gets you in the millions of views potentially is the likeliness is very small. There are exceptions, by the way, but those exceptions have other reasons. So if you're, let's say you're a brand and you want to make some content where you give advice. You know, I've seen this. I've seen a brand and they make TikToks. And what they do is they just make these viral trends of some dance. And the question is, well, how many other brands are doing exactly that? Or I hear this constantly. Social media managers are like, we need to meme more. Well, are you going to outperform some of these other meme pages? You know, are you really going to outperform? I'm not going to mention brands, but there's certain really large brands that are, I think Duolingo does it, for example. You know, they make meme content. It's not always great, but at least they use this really big doll that you can look at, right? So at least it's a little bit outstanding in some way or another. So I want you to think about this. How are you presenting things different? You have to do it different for the sake of being different. Let's move on. So next thing, this is just our brain naturally pays attention to things that are outstanding. Next things is anything novel. So this is where we're going into the stage. The next three are going to relate to curiosity. When people tell you, make people curious, then I want you to ask this question next time. Well, what makes people curious? How do I define curiosity? And I want you to think about this with anything. If somebody tells you like, hey, make engaging content, what does that even mean? That doesn't mean shit. Sorry for my language here, but I'm very passionate about this. And the same for curiosity. So the next three, if you want to make people curious, you need one of the next three, right? So first of all is novelty. We naturally are interested in stuff that feels novel. So if you make an educational content piece, if you are giving fitness advice, for example, and you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to talk about 5 ways to improve your health. Drink more water, walk more, and you go over these 5 tips. These are the most basic tips. After tip number 1, the audience will already think, you know what, that wasn't novel. So the likeliness that the rest of the content is novel and new is very small. So when you make content and you give information, you want to think, is this information actually new to this person? If you have a, let's say, because I know some of you may deal with brands, if you are if you are like a fitness brand, the likeliness that your consumer has already looked into the most basic fitness advice is very, very high. So if you're going to just touch on that one and you're too afraid to niche down for the sake of building an audience, you're going to lose out. I'm reading the chat for a second. Okay, most of these questions I will answer them later. Perfect. So the next step is here. For curiosity, we know novelty works. Next is uncertainty. So novelty is more about here's 10 ways to do something. Uncertainty is more we present the viewer with a journey, but we are vague about the outcome. And then we get excited about the journey. So for example, you know the trends where people do day one, I do this, day two, I do this, day three, I do this. The reason why those trends work is because day one, day two, it's not like exciting. But if somebody says day 100 until day one, like I will keep making day 100 of my fitness challenge and I will keep doing this until something happens, right? The uncertainty here is within how many days it's going to take. And when we naturally put this uncertainty within our piece of content and we give this, we make a certain journey. We know what the journey is going to be like. We just don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. We naturally find interest in that one. So that's uncertainty. And last way to generate interest through whether it's curiosity or just having something truly interesting, truly outstanding, is knowledge gaps. You know, people like informational stuff. They want result A, and you have the solution, but they want to be educated. And this actually plays on us as humans. Humans are constantly seeking new knowledge. So whenever you suggest that there's some knowledge that you have that they can have, they are going to be invested. And that's when we purely look at how much do they care about this knowledge. So if I'm like, and I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I have a little post that I made, and one is titled, you know, here's 5 tips to drink water to make yourself healthy, right? How motivated am I to listen to these tips? Versus, if you don't follow these 5 tips, you're gonna die, right? I am kind of motivated to get this kind of information, so my need for this information goes higher. And any piece of content, we just want to think, how does this fit under any of these, right? So even let's say I am making a video, let's say I make a video, last to leave circle wins $1,000, right? I've worked on those videos. The question is, okay, is that a good idea? Well, let me ask myself about this video and the content within. Does it fall under any of these things? Last to leave. Okay, is it outstanding enough? And I'm going to give you a way to recognize it's outstanding, right? Is it outstanding enough? Well, at a certain point, if you ask me 2 years, no, actually, if you asked me 4 years ago, before everybody started doing it, right, it was an outstanding enough idea. So, you know, naturally it creates more interest. Is it novel enough? At that time, it was novel. And maybe the approach, the challenges at that time was novel enough to make people interested. Last to leave the uncertainty, while we insert this uncertainty to keep people interested within the video, right? Who's going to win? We built these character cares and we don't know who's going to win. We don't know what's going to happen, right? And then the knowledge gaps, I mean, this doesn't really live off the knowledge gap too much. But you see how we can start arguing these kind of things. And if you think about your audience and you cannot really tell which of these you're using to generate interest, you're going to notice that the likeliness of going viral and growing an audience is very, very small, right? Because this is all new. This is all like, what new stuff can I experience, right? Now, the downside that you have with all this is, okay, so this sounds all cool and this is all theoretical, but what's a practical piece of advice? So I'm gonna give you something that we do in YouTube. So I work with a lot of YouTubers. I also work with some people on Instagram, TikTok, but my main field is YouTube. So I'm gonna give you an example with YouTube, but this example also applies to any other platform. And it's a concept called outlier theory. And I'd be curious to know if you've heard of it before, but where do we start? Well, outlier theory is a technique that we use in order to quickly identify where people already interest. Because if I ask you, okay, what is outstanding? Where are people, like, what are people naturally gravitating towards? I can try to understand this and solve this with my mind, but what's the likeliness that you're going to be right? Maybe you're missing some information. And that's why outlier theory comes into play, because outlier theory looks at data. So here's an example. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a guy called Alex Hermosi. So Alex, he makes business type of content. Once in a while, you'll see him make something about cooking or something about fitness, but every time he does that, he's messing up. I'm just letting you know. But if we look at his recent content, right, we look at the videos and we look at which videos are outliers. So when you make content, you yourself make content, you want to look into outlier theory and base your judgments and decisions on what to make next based on that. So let's say you make business advice. You could easily make every single one of those ideas. You could make how to get so rich you realize money has no meaning. And you're like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to make it. But you see, if you look at him, and yes, this was a day ago, so maybe it's not that. Actually, it's not a great example because it's a day ago. But if we look at this one, when it comes down to views, it's not a 600,000 view video, right? So let's say you make this one and this doesn't become an outlier after a week or something, then the likeness that you're going to grow is very small because you're not looking for the outstanding ideas. These things that we know is generating interest. And if we look at these ones, normally he scores 100K, 400K, 60K, 180K, 100K, 600K, 80K. You see how both of these ideas generate significant amount of more views than he normally does if we average them out? And that's what outlier theory is. We look within a time frame of somebody uploading content, and you can just do this. Go on Instagram as well. Go to somebody's profile, go to Reels, and just scroll and see whatever gets more views. And that's called outlier theory. Now, outlier theory goes a little bit beyond this one. It's not just copy this straight up, right? And this is why I want you to take notes, or this is what I want you to remember. When you're looking into outlier theory, it could be one element or it could be multiple elements that were outliers regardless. So let's take the above example here. How to make money so fast it feels illegal. This by itself, if we copy this straight up, we might still fail if we use this as our outlier theory to make content that is outstanding. Because we see this idea, this is outstanding, great. But how do we take this idea and how do we go further? We want to understand what part of it is an outlier, and does everything work really well? So we have a few types of outliers. First, we have the format outlier, and that's when it comes down to titling. So in a video cases, what's the format here? How to make something, insert something, so fast it feels illegal. That's what I would say. So, or how to X so fast it feels illegal, right? So let's say I'm a fitness creator, how to gain muscle so fast it feels illegal, right? Let's say I'm a Minecraft creator, how to beat Minecraft so fast it feels illegal, right? So we have how to X so fast it feels illegal. That's the format that we're working within. So if we find an outlier on any type of channel, don't just copy it. Understand the format and now check across multiple niches, multiple channels. You want to check if this is an outlier, yes or no. And then okay, the format was an actual outlier consistently across multiple channels. Because if you don't check this across multiple channels, it could be that it was just an outlier for Alex. Maybe not from anybody else. And I saw an interesting question, which I will answer, which is why don't we just sort by most popular? That's a great question. I love that you asked this, because the reason why not is because if you sort by most popular, you get all the overperforming videos. But you don't know for a fact, was this an actual outlier at that time? Because what if all of these videos had 600,000 views? Right? Yes, that might be my most popular, but that didn't make it necessarily an outlier. An outlier is a video that had way more views than other videos uploaded around the same time frame. And this is super, super crucial. Now, I've just talked about the fact that there was an outlier format, but that's not the only thing about this title that stands out. Because maybe it is related to the word illegal. And that's called a topic outlier. So a format outlier is the general way you represent something. A topic outlier is the words that we insert. So the same thing we do here is we look across multiple channels, multiple niches, and we look at whenever they insert the word illegal, does this make people more inclined to click on these videos? And if we start understanding that one, often you will find that it is. I will tell you, in the Minecraft niche, right? We analyze superheroes like Spider-Man and Batman and etc. etc. And what you notice is that some of them are consistently performing very well, and some of them are not at all. For example, I'm not sure how many of you are into superheroes, but if you take Loki, Loki does not create great outliers consistently across many channels. But if you take, for example, um, Spider-Man, Spider-Man consistently creates outliers for a lot of people. So that's something to think about. There are topic outliers, there's format outliers. So whenever you make a video idea or you make any idea, because the same concept applies to Twitter and Instagram as well, you want to identify every part of your video and understand, was this an outlier format? Did I insert within that format an outlier keyword or an outlier topic? And then you can go further. You could even be like, hey, is it structure dependent? So is the way that the video is presented, do I have to do a certain way? Yes or no? But in general, this is what it is. And you can do the same for thumbnails, right? Now, thumbnails are a little bit easier than this. But what I really want to try to get across is that the outlier theory is what's essential if you want to grow. Because that's where we get extra interest. This is, one could say, you know what, hey, he had 100,000 views on this video, the before after video here. That's great. But that's not how you grow. Because if you only target your returning audience or your own audience constantly, eventually you will struggle to get enough new viewers to keep on growing. Because returning viewers, guess what? People get bored of your ass. Right? If you make 6 videos, like some people watch 6 of your videos and they're like, you know what? I love this guy, but I can't watch his content anymore. Or anything like that. So in that case, that's exactly what's happening. And that's why you need to do outliers. Outliers are your awareness campaigns. They bring in new audiences to overall elevate your other content. And if you do that consistently, and I can tell you with all of the creators that I work with, the top creators, right? The people who pull in like 20 million or 100 million views per video, every video was outlier research. Every single video. So, okay, we're going to move on. And yes, for plugins, actually, I will call out some plugins. Oneof10.com. So that's number one, of10.com. Valio.com is also a great one. Viewstats.com is great. These are tools that people use. vidIQ is actually has a tool recently as well. All of those tools, you can use them, but you can do this manually as well. But this should be the basis of any idea that you create. And I can tell you is that I make Twitter content. And about a year ago, I would say we got what, 50 likes per post, which is, I mean, it's not terrible, but it's that is not what you want if you want to be seen as like a great strategist, right? So what we started doing is we started literally going to profiles and saying, hey, what's the overall composition? What does the image look like? What's the fonts that they use? And we like, there's literally outlier fonts. I can tell you, a handwritten font works a lot better than a normal, like computer written, I don't know what's called actually, written font. Handwritten works so much better. So what do we start doing? I downloaded a pack of like 20 handwritten fonts and everything is handwritten. And then we noticed like, hey, you know what? Seems like capital letters works really well that are handwritten. So let's do that one as well. And we started doing all these elements with outliers and eventually we create content. And now a lot of our content starts scoring like 10 times the amount of reach. Right. So that's just to give you an example. Okay, we're going to move on a little bit from here. And I love the questions. Keep coming them in because in the Q&A, I'm going to go through all of these questions that you are putting in chat. Okay, so engagement. Now I want you to think about All of what I just explained is all just to hook the audience. But what I always tell, and this is the thing, my expertise is actually specifically, it's called audience retention, which is how do we retain audiences, not how do we capture audiences' attention, right? It's actually actually forming like a deep expertise in anything related to ideas has actually been a fairly recent project of mine. Most of my attention has been how do we make the best experiences, and that's how you really grow. And this is how I want you to think. Because many people think about how do I title it? How do I hook it? What's my first 30 seconds looking like? Right? That's what people think about. Right? My first in a TikTok video, what's my first words? Which by the way, it is important, but unless somebody truly engaged with your content, they're not gonna if the algorithms see that, yes, they paid attention, but they didn't engage further with the content, the algorithms will stop promoting that content to that viewer. That's why this is so important, because you are dealing with algorithms. If you want organic growth, it's not just like put stuff out there and it's being served towards an audience. The algorithm has to be like, hey, I think this is a great piece of content for this viewer. And that great piece of content is mostly judged based on this part. On YouTube, it's called audience retention. On the other platforms, we could have other types of engagement. And that's why I also want to say there's two types of engagement. There's active engagement and passive engagement. And I want you to think about it like this. Active engagement is likes, comments, subscriptions, shares, etc. Right? Some algorithms use this a lot, some algorithms don't. I can tell you the YouTube long-form algorithm doesn't use likes, subscriptions, comments and stuff as much as what we call audience retention. So, and that's passive engagement. Active engagement is what is the viewer doing with your piece of content. Passive engagement is what's the audience not doing. Or because, you know, if the audience is just looking at your piece of content or reading it and not scrolling, not touching the screen at all, and just reading or watching your piece of content, they're not doing anything. It's the inaction. And a lot of algorithms actually love this because it keeps people on the platform for a very long period of time. And during that time, we could serve some ads if we really want to. So when you think about engagement, don't just think about active engagement. Think about passive engagement as well. But I want you to think about it, right? I'm going to take an example here. So this is what I say. I want you to imagine figuring out a restaurant. I'm not sure where everybody here is from specifically, but I want you to think about some new place that opened in your town, right? And everywhere in town, there's flyers about it. It's a great restaurant. It looks amazing. I mean, look at the left side. It just looks good, right? It's a small restaurant. I will give this, you know, and I'm not sure how much food you're gonna get, but let's say the food is delicious. Actually, no. Actually, I'm now prompting you the wrong way. Let's say it looks good. So we don't know much about the food yet, right? The likeliness that you're gonna go there is very high. It looks good, you know, we have to try it out, right? But, and that's the interest part that we just covered. But imagine that you order your dessert here, and in this specific restaurant, even though it looks good on the right side, you take a bite from it, and guess what? It just tastes dry. Like the top side here, the strawberry, you know, it looks a little expired, you know. The cake tastes dry. So my question then, even though you have all this one, what's the likeliness that next time you're going to give it proper attention? Or are you going to re-engage with that content or watch it for a very long time? It's very small. Because if you don't like something, just like in a restaurant, you're not going to go back to that restaurant. And that's the same with content. You're not going to continue to engage with content if you don't like it. And that's why this is the most important part. It's the value within the content. And I can tell you right now that 90% of people are struggling with this. And that's from the smaller creators, people who make initial content. Because they completely ignore how actual valuable the content is. And I'm going to tell you about some things that you want to pay attention to. Most people are like, oh, what's my packaging look like? How do I sell it? How do I make people pay attention? That's all of their obsession. And they forget to spend enough time on actually making the experience good. And I can tell you this. If this restaurant looked terrible, and I know every one of you, there's a big claim here, knows a restaurant that doesn't necessarily look the best. But when you eat there, it's amazing food. It's not some high-end 5-star crazy restaurant looking, but it's amazing food, right? And that's the same with a video. If you're a video or any other kind of content piece, If your content piece isn't great at grabbing attention, it doesn't look that great, people naturally still get curious. And if they interact with it and it gives them a great experience, then in the future, for that viewer or that person interacting with your post, they will continue to interact with it because they liked it. That's the reason why this is so important. So that brings me to I'm gonna give you some insights on YouTube, what actually matters. Take a look at this. And we're gonna go through a long list. And this is a non-exhaustive list. So what I mean with that one is there is hundreds and hundreds of items on this list normally, but I just picked a few. I cherry picked a few. So if you think about what makes for a good experience, right? Here we go. Scenery changes. These are the things we think about in video content, right? How much do we change a scene? Because if I'm just sitting in my basic room and the camera doesn't change, I'm not going to different locations, it's naturally less interesting to look at. It's less engaging to look at. So we want location changes a lot of times. Storytelling structure. How do we tell it? Like, do we begin with a lot of context? When does my inciting incident happens? Which is like, it's the moment that puts the story into motion. The sentence structure. Yes, I'm going to give you an example, actually, for this one. I want you to listen to the following 2 sentences. And I want you to tell me which one you feel is more engaging. And I can tell you that one of these, for most people, feels more engaging. So the first one is sentence number 1. And I'm not going to put them in any order, so it's not like the first one is a bad one and a good one. So think about these sentences, right? If you, you have to do outlier, you got to do outlier theory right now if you want to win on YouTube. So you got to do outlier theory right now if you want to win on YouTube. That's sentence number 1. Sentence number 2. If you want to win on YouTube, you got to do outlier theory right now. Now I want you to think for yourself. If you hear those 2 sentences, which one of these is more engaging? And what we notice when we analyze this kind of stuff and when we research this is that the second one actually performs better. The reason why is because it ends with an action. It drives action. It's more exciting. So whenever I work with creators, we often, and we call these action-driven sentences, we end our sentence, or we reposition words, parts of our sentence, to make it that sentences drive towards action. They drive the story forward. And that makes for more engaging stuff. So those kind of things matter. And I know people don't think about that a lot of times. A lot of people are like, I'm just going to write a post here. I need 500 characters. And they write 500 characters. But the problem is they don't think about how are my sentences structured. Is it driving enough action, etc. The next few I'm going to go through a little faster. The type of jokes that you make. A lot of people make wordplay jokes. I can tell you, wordplay jokes actually don't perform as well as simple visual jokes or even a funny sound. Yes, making a wordplay is generally less appealing to a wide audience than a simple fart joke, for example. Or like a fart sound effect specifically. Right? Think about that. Personality of character. Many people don't think about it. If you work with a brand, I can tell you this. A lot of times, the reason why your organic content is not growing is because the person in the video is just not likable enough. And this is a hard thing to say, but I've worked with brands where I said, look, this person just either, and I'm going to, this is going to sound very brutal, but I've said it multiple times, like, this person doesn't look good enough. The person looks like he hasn't taken a shower in a week. I'm sorry, but that's important. Or his voice just doesn't sound like, it doesn't sound good. His voice, he's annoying. And unfortunately, either we fix it with this person or we replace the person. And this depends if you make your own content or not. Wide appeal as well. We want to only talk about, we mainly want to talk about things that are widely appealing to a lot of people. For example, you may make references to something that only a few people get. Think about it. When you do that in your organic content, that second, 5% of your audience, bam, gone. You lose them. This delivering on expected value. Think about it. The title sets an expectation. Did you deliver on that expectation? Are you currently delivering? So let's say you write a post. Let's now talk about a text post. 2 paragraphs down the line, do I still feel like you're talking about the thing that hooked me? Or do I feel like you're going a different direction? Right? If you make a video about going to Disneyland, do I still feel like we're going to Disneyland? Or are you now talking about something that happened 5 days ago that has nothing to do with Disneyland? Those kind of things we have to think about. The side characters as well. I've told people to remove their friends from videos simply because those are not good side characters, not very likable. Visualization. In video content, a lot of times we want to think about visualization. If I talk about things, if I talk about a house on fire, I better show a house on fire. I don't talk about it, I show it. It's very important if you want to make things engaging. The music volume can change. These are all things when it comes out to video content. The sound effects that you're using, they give a lot of depth. The way that we transition, I can tell you this, with video content, most people take like 20 seconds to transition, but a little tactic or a little known fact, if you transition for more than 5 seconds from one location to another, and you have all these fancy drone shots and stuff, I can tell you your audience is going to be bored out of their minds. Keep your transition short. So a good piece of advice. Shot progression, how one shot leads to the other, the type of information you give, the pacing, and whether there's repetition or not. Repetition is really good for education, but any kind of repetition, visual repetition, music repeats itself, all of those kind of things will lead to people less likely to engage with your content and tune out or disengage with your content. And we don't want that. And these are just like a few out of a list of hundreds of things that you have to think about, right? But this is, again, this presentation is to just get you thinking in a certain direction. It's not to tell you too many tips like, hey, do this, do that, because all of you are different. Some of you are working with brands. Some of you are working on YouTube. Some of you are working on Twitter. And in the Q&A, feel free to, I saw some questions specifically about YouTube or about other platforms. Feel free to ask that specifically because I see a lot about YouTube. I love that because I love YouTube, but feel free to talk about anything. So always ask, what's the audience getting out of this one, right? If they're constantly getting something out of it, they're going to stay engaged. Nobody's going to tune out if you keep on delivering them good value. But the single second that you start just talking about nonsense or things that are unrelated or do not deliver on what the video promised to deliver, they're going to tune out. Or they're going to just disengage with the content. Right? And also, this is an important thing, the audience doesn't care. A lot of people think that because you want to put out a message, that people are going to listen. People don't care about your message. And this is a hard pill to swallow. But care gets generated through time. If you engage enough with an audience, they may care. If it's personally relevant to them, they may care. But just because let's say you have a company, and the company's like, oh, we reached $1 million in revenue in this month, for example. Talking about that is not good. Because what's in it for the viewer? Why do they care about your company? But if you then say, how did we get to $1 million in the last month, for example, then yes, maybe the audience might care because they could learn something from it. Think about the knowledge gaps, right? So always come from a position, is this really for the audience, or am I selfish and I'm just trying to brag or put something out because I like it? And I have creators, by the way, that make content that are like the Disneyland thing, where I'm like, do you want to make this Disneyland video for the audience? Or do you want to go to Disneyland and you want to make a video to kind of warrant yourself to do it? Right? Very important lesson. Now, last part I want to quickly go over, and then I want to get to a Q&A. Actually, I don't want to quickly go over this one. This is actually a very, very cool one. So we're going to go a little slow on this one. But I'm going to give you an example. When I was making this presentation, should I ask this question? But then I realized this question won't work very well. My question would have been, has any of you been to IKEA? And the answer should be yes. Because if you haven't, you're missing out. IKEA is good, you know? I do kind of like the meatballs, to be honest. But also, you notice whenever you check out at IKEA, there's still a coffee shop at the end. Do you really think that's coincidence? Or do you think there's a strategy behind it? I can tell you there's a strategy behind it. It's because if you check out of IKEA, typically you buy furniture. And that bill is not always very low. You know, let's say you buy some nice couches. You know, you buy yourself a nice kitchen. You could be like $1,000, you know, $2,000 down, you know, and you get that bill. Doesn't make you feel good because that goes down your bank account and you feel that. So the feeling that you leave with is a negative feeling, right? That's going to impact the way that you remember IKEA. And the likening is that you're going to come back and re-engage with IKEA, just like in content, right? It's not going to contribute to a good satisfaction. I'm going to give you a different example, and I'm going to tell you in a second what this principle or this psychological principle is called. But I want you to think this. I'm not sure if any of you have gone to America. You know, it took me many years before I gone to America for the first time. But this is a store called Publix. If you're from Bulgaria, imagine Billa, right? You go to that store, and this is the self-checkout. But what they do when you're not at the self-checkout, you know, the person here in line on the left side, after they give you the receipt, they don't just say, this cost you $200. They say, this cost you $200, but with your card that you used, we saved you $40. So they emphasize the discount that you got. Why? Because of a principle called the peak end rule. These are the kind of things that you want to think about. And I encourage you, if you want to make really good viral content that is like helps you grow organically, I need you to think about psychology. I need you to think about audience psychology. And peak end rule is one of those things. Now, what is peak end rule? Peak end rule is very simple. When we go through an experience, and this really applies to videos, we judge it or we remember it, either positively or negative, not because of the overall experience, which over here is like not that great, right? But by the peak emotional moment somewhere throughout the experience and by how it ends. And when you think about the IKEA example or the Publix example, in those cases, those companies have purposefully made the end experience the most enjoyable they could. IKEA, with the coffee that you get after you're buying, the taste of your coffee or whatever you buy afterwards, not the $2,000, which is a negative emotion. But that coffee, you know, yes, it costs some money, but, you know, hey, it feels great, right? So you leave with a better experience than if you would have left with just a $2,000 bill, right? And I know a lot of you might not buy the coffee. I don't, but I mean, they're just increasing the chance to do so. And the same thing with Publix. Instead of saying, hey, here's your $200 bill, please check out. Beep, right? Instead of that, they're like, hey, we saved you $40. And you leave feeling as if you've saved money, while in reality, you just paid $200 for some milk and eggs. And by the way, America is really expensive, so it's not too ridiculous to think about it like that. So, but these principles can also apply to content. Think about it as well. In a video content, right? Most people are like, I put my best content up front. And by the end, you know, all the bad stuff towards the back. Well, think about it. If your last piece of content, if the last part of your video is so boring, that's a negative experience. So people are going to remember your content differently. So the next time they're less likely to engage with your content because you didn't optimize for the peak end rule. Right. And there's a lot of these principles. There's the primacy effect. There's bandwagon effect. There's also just general social proof, which is a little bit less related to satisfaction and more related to interest. Because when things have more views, we're naturally more interested towards it. There's so many psychological elements that you may want to may want to look at and look into that could all affect it. And then the simple thing that you think is, how do I apply this to my content? Right? So the way that I do it is very simple. Make sure that whenever you write a text post, somewhere in the middle, you make a revelation. You give some piece of information that is new to people and exciting. And towards the end, you end up with something really cool. And talking about that end up really cool, we're going to go to the peak end rule of me, which is, but what about data? And then... And I know for some people this will give a negative experience, because I know some of you are really passionate about making good content that resonates well and that you personally like. But to put it very blunt, I don't really care too much. Like, I got into this industry. I used to be a professional gamer, right? For those who are familiar with a game called PUBG, I was the top player in PUBG, and you know, I was in the gaming industry. I was a professional player, and then one guy was like, hey, there's this YouTube algorithm, and there's YouTube data. You want to just obsess over data and just figure out through data points what the audience likes? And that's what I'm going to tell you, is that the whole reason why my career has been going so good and how I've been able to work with most of these top creators is not because I feel what people like.
I don't have a clue what people like. I will tell you that. I just simply think about, you know what? Let's look at the data. And that's where I come down to the algorithms. Right? So when you make content, one of the most important things is that you're optimizing for two things. What I just talked about is you're optimizing for the audience and the audience's experience. What interests them, what keeps them engaged, and what truly creates a satisfying experience. Those three words are your most important words. If you don't remember those words, you will inevitably fail. So remember interest, engagement, satisfaction. And that will give positive signals to the algorithm. Let's say this middle cog here is the algorithm. But what the algorithm is trying to do, by the way, it's trying to take these content pieces that it tries to learn about. And then it learns through your behavior, it learns about what you like. And then as a third element, it looks at the platform needs. What does the platform want? And based on that, it tries to make connections. And I'm going to explain how the YouTube algorithm works as an example. And I'm also going to quickly explain how the TikTok algorithm works as an example, because they are different. So let's begin with the TikTok algorithm, actually. The TikTok algorithm is very easy. You upload a video, it goes into the system. The system tests it against the test group, and based on the test, it pushes to further audiences. Now, it also doesn't just test it to any test group. It doesn't just always pick random users. Once it knows who likes your content, it may first serve it to that audience and then further audiences, right? And by doing so, it will also look at signals like how does the user keep on interacting with that content, yes and no? If the answer is yes, keep serving. If the answer is no, I don't keep serving it. Very simple algorithm. But YouTube doesn't work like this. And if you will look up right now, and I encourage you to do this, if you look up right now from top famous strategists of how the YouTube algorithms work, this is what they will tell you. You upload a video to YouTube, it tests it against the audience. Based on that audience, it's going to serve it to more and more and more people. But I can tell you that's not true. That's not how the algorithm works. What the algorithm does is, whenever you log in, YouTube knows so many things about you. When do you watch? What device type are you watching on? How many things are you watching? All those kind of things. It learns about you, about your interests. What are your psychographics, right? What topics are you typically interested in? It knows this. It creates a user profile. And every single time a video gets uploaded, it doesn't automatically push this to an audience. It learns about this video. What is this video about? It has algorithms for that. What's the title saying, right? What's the content saying, right? Like who uploaded this video? How long is this video? And then the algorithm on YouTube, they have something called expected watch time per impression. They want as much watch time per time that they serve the video to somebody. So what they then try to do is every single time somebody logs onto YouTube, it tries to look at its database, pick one video, connect it to a user, only if it predicts that the user likes that. Else, it doesn't test. What it does is it just connects and then learns from it afterwards. That's like the simple version of it. Because we're getting in the hour, so I didn't want to go too in deep because I could talk 2 hours about the algorithm. But what I really want you to think about here is that think about these three things: interest, engagement, and satisfaction. Think about the overall mindset that I try to convey to you today. And then connect them, understand that to understand your audience. And then understand what the algorithm wants or what the platforms want. And then understand that through your content and through serving your content, will the user be interested, engaged, and satisfied? Will the platform get what they want? And does your video serve that purpose? And if yes, your video will grow. So then you can use your data and stuff to analyze everything. But that's like the simple, like the most simplified way to explain this. So we're going to transition slowly to a Q&A. And I saw that there's some questions, and we're going to go rapidly through this one. We got like a good half hour. What I do want to say is that if anybody's interested, I have a bunch of YouTube content as well. I have a bunch of stuff on Twitter. Read through it as well. There's some tips and tricks. Today, I didn't do too many tips and tricks. What I tried to do is I tried to bring you across a mindset. I didn't try to bring you across tips and tricks today. So, but feel free to look at that one as well. And also with the presentation, I'll make sure to link the presentation so it serves as a good reminder. But But I think the one big thing I want you to remember from all this: interest, engagement, satisfaction, and understanding what the algorithms want and connecting that to the audience. So, now that being said, I'm going to go through some questions here. And hopefully, whenever I stop sharing, if I'm correct here, it should show my camera, I think. Yes, if that's not the case, then I'll take my whiteboard. Okay. I'm not getting any answer. 1 second. Do you? Okay. Anyways, while I wait for an answer here, I believe that I can already start answering some questions. Perfect. You can see the camera. I love it. So there you go. I'm as bald as the picture showed I was. Let's go through these questions. I'm going to go from the beginning, the first questions that were here, and then we're going to go to the end. But feel free to type all the questions. So, how do brands effectively leverage artificial intelligence or AI and machine learning for personalized marketing? I believe that that is less related to organic growth, unfortunately. But right now, I can tell you that the way that we use AI for organic growth, which also, by the way, all of this organic stuff works with paid stuff as well, because you're dealing with humans, right? Humans either are interested or they're not, right? So if you can grow organic, paid, it's easy, right? Because you can make content that people generally want to engage with, right? But if you only know how to, put your ads at the right place and you just serve and serve and serve, then it's not good. But basically, when it comes down to our AI, the way that we use AI is to better understand audience segments and analyze comment sentiment, for example. That could be a thing. Now, I'm not a big on analyzing comments because it's a very minority audience. But we could utilize AI, for example, to see like, okay, if we talk about subject A, we know that people are active and they overall have more positive sentiment. But if we talk about topic B, there seems to be more negative sentiment. And based on your wants and needs, you want to change according to that. Now, AI, you could use chatbots and stuff or language. Like you could use ChatGPT, for example, to write your scripts. But I can tell you, I will tell you this right now. None of the chatbots for video content, for text content is a little bit different, especially if you personalize it. None of them fully understand what makes an engaging piece of content. You still have to do the manual analysis. And if you're going to rely just on that, a lot of times you will fail. Now, that being said, there's some really cool AI recently that people have been using, and I've been talking about this publicly as well. It's AI dubbing, where it takes, let's say, I'm talking to you all of this, and imagine that now we take this recording and we just send it through AI dubbing, and it takes my voice and just changes the words into Bulgarian or Spanish or whatever language you want. And on the other hand, if you don't speak English, you can still understand me. That's one of the most powerful ones that has been coming out recently. Look into it. It's really cool. Best practices for creating YouTube video content that resonates both new and returning viewers. This is my best advice here. Focus on the new viewer. Because returning viewers, they return because they loved the experience that you've given them previously. But so they re-engage because they enjoyed the past experience. However, even returning audiences typically want a novel experience. So they want the presentation to be something they're familiar with, or maybe the format sometimes, or the structure, but they still want something new about it. So appeal to the new viewer and stay consistent in the way that you present things in order to re-engage your returning audience. So if you think about text posts and you have a certain style of editing it, continue to edit that style for the sake of the returning audience. But make sure the content you deliver has enough novelty to it, uncertainty to it, presents a knowledge gap, or is straight up outstanding compared to what is out there. What are the latest trends in YouTube video content? Shorts, live streaming, long form content. Should brands adapt to them? So I will give you with long form. Let me go through each of them. Live streaming typically is not that great. It is very, the problem is that it expects a lot from the audience. And for that reason, and people love video on demand a lot more. So live streaming, if you want niche audiences, very dedicated audiences, yeah, it works. But overall, live streaming for for personalized content, it works. For non-personalized content, it doesn't work that great. Now, long form, the trend that we've been seeing is that people are making longer. I have one client, for example, and he was making 12 to 14-minute content, and then I gave him so much advice, and we've been working together for like 4 years already at this point. I gave him some advice, and the advice worked, but the problem, it didn't work as good as his competitors. So then we did a competitor analysis, and we're like, hey, well, all of your competitors are just making 20-minute content. So I was like, you know what? Screw everything that I said. Just make your content 20 minutes, even if that makes you break some of the rules that I've given you. And at this point, we do all of the advice that I've given him plus the 20-minute content, and it just works so much better. So that's something that we're seeing in long-form content. The longer stuff seems to work better. That's the trend that we're starting to see. With shorts, shorts, typically the reason why people fail, I'll say this, is because they don't stay for long enough. I have one creator, he uploads 3 shorts per day. And we typically see that it takes 30 to 50 shorts before they start seeing proper traction. Now, some stuff will go viral before, but it can take a long time with shorts. Shorts volume is very key. But trends, by the way, don't worry about trends. I'm going to tell you this. Because the thing is like this. There's always an audience for 12-minute content. There's always an audience for 20-minute content. There's audiences for shorts. There's always something. And whatever trends there are, as long as the trends, they're good because you can jump on them, but they change every day, right? So if you're trying to keep up with the trends, you're going to be late. So the best way to grow is just think about the psychology of the audience and make content accordingly, and you will succeed. You will have up months, you will have down months, but overall you will succeed. That's the big good answer. I don't remember the last time that I checked trends, right? Yeah, outlier theory sometimes brings you to a trend and you have to act upon it. So how can brands build a loyal YouTube community around their channel and increase subscriber growth? Don't even worry about subscriber growth. YouTube doesn't serve content based on subscribers. People subscribe, but it doesn't mean anything. Like it's a minimal impact. When you want to talk about a loyal community, you just have to ask yourself, what are you doing in their life, right? Loyal community and loyalty is also limited. If you have a brand, for example, somebody might engage with you for a month, maybe 2 months, maybe a year, but they will stop engaging with you as soon as you're not relevant to their life, and as soon as you don't provide enough value, or somebody else provides more value. So if the question is, if you want to build a YouTube community, you need to think about what part of your content resonates enough with them, and does it feel like there's an authentic connection? And authenticity, by the way, is not just about being yourself, it's about more believable. So whenever you're talking about them, does it feel like whatever you're saying is believable, or does it feel like you're putting up an act? But that's like very, very simple. And I can tell you that even people with millions of subs, they still struggle with loyal audiences. Outlier is a video that performed. Okay. I've already seen that one. Okay. Next question here is, I'm seeing some stuff come in the audience Q&A, and I'm not sure if this is closed off or not, because I want to make sure that I get to all the questions if there are questions. And I also saw a ball joke. I didn't mind that one. What are the advantages of running YouTube live streaming events for product launches, brand updates, and Q&A sessions? YouTube live streaming events could be done, but think about it like this. How many people are going to be there whenever that goes live? Like, you're literally telling the viewer, hey, I need you to take this time out of your day. You're not guaranteed to have great value because there's not always social proof, right? With a video, oh, it's 100,000 views. That's great. People seem to enjoy it. I'll click on it as well. But with a live stream, you're just being promised that you're being given something. So live streams, you want to typically look at them as PR stunts. because that way, like maybe you're going to do a big reveal, and that's a cool moment that everybody comes together at a specific time. People clip things and etc. etc. But most of the times, if you're going to focus that on your strategy, then you will not succeed with what you're trying to achieve. But again, it does depend on your achievement. So for example, I have some live sessions that I do or some things because they allow me to better connect because it's important. I'm a consultant. So for me, connecting with my consumer is very important because if I connect with somebody personally and I'm able to do that with a stream where people actually get to see me or talk to me, in that case, that's the likeness that somebody's going to convert to a sale is a lot higher. But that's also because I do high ticket consulting. Like, I'm not going to go into the pricing, but I can tell you is that for the general person, I like my pricing would never make sense, right? So for me, if I want to make a sale or get a client, it comes from connection, and I don't like doing sales calls. I hate them, right? So that's my way to do it. But if you are, for example, just having a product, I mean, if you're launching something on a website that people are going to buy regardless of the live stream, and most people didn't need to see the live stream in order to buy it, it's not a crucial part of your sales process. I mean, it's just a waste of your time at that point. Then you might as well make videos, right? So it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So Kaizenat and iShow Stream are great. I see this pop up, and I'll track back to the SEO because I love the SEO question. Kaizenat and iShow Speed are streamers who are doing fantastic right now. But they have exceptional, interesting personalities. And a lot of people don't have the time to watch them live, but they blow up because you can clip their stuff and it's entertaining. I enjoy watching the subathon that guy did, and I enjoyed iShow Speed as well because they are crazy. But every single stream they do, there's clippable content. So me as a person who's busy, I get to enjoy them as well. That's very important. Content needs to appeal to those who watch it live and those who don't watch it live. And that's how you really go viral. But that's more about virality. Most people, by the way, most people who live stream, to put it very blunt, they do it because they're because it's a lot easier than making a full produced long form video. Right? I just went to America for an entire week to do a video. I'm gonna be in a large video, and that took an entire week of producing. Right? So that's live stream. Just putting on a live stream is way easier. But again, it's not about you. It's about the audience. If you have to put more effort into it, then you got to do that. So in my opinion, this is a statement. And I love the statement because this plays on SEO. And I believe that based on the question that I'm seeing is the final question that we'll go through. If there's any more questions, feel free to post some stuff. We can quickly go through them. If not, then I'll answer this question and I'll give you one more key takeaway, something to walk away with to look into. So the statement that I'm reading here, because I'm going to read it out loud, which is good. In my opinion, it should go like this. Title, thumbnail, entire packaging. First 30 seconds must be the hook trigger if you do long form. Description, SEO, tags. They don't matter as much. So this one, the reason why I read it in full is because I think it's a good one to think about. First of all, I would change title and thumbnail. Thumbnail is there to grab attention if you do YouTube content. If you don't do YouTube content, if you do short form, it's your first second and visually how it looks like. If you don't do that and you are a text form creator, because I'm kind of a text form creator on Twitter, then it's about the overall way that your tweet looks like or the image that you added. So thumbnail is all about grabbing attention. It doesn't send really a message. It just does it grab attention. So thumbnail first. Then goes the title or whatever your opening line is if you make text form in order to hook people. And it is true. You need to give a good hook. Your opening sentences are important. And I can tell you the first words are even important. In titles, your first 2 words are actually crucial. Then the entire packaging, I mean, that's kind of combining the two. People don't really reanalyze too much. We just see people go thumbnail, title, then on YouTube, for example, you have the autoplay. People do autoplay to see, okay, what's it kind of gonna be? Like, what kind of video am I getting? Don't forget about autoplay if you have this kind of stuff. If you think about Twitter has above the fold and under the fold, right? So that's like, do you have to click see more or not? It's very important to put the right amount of stuff there and to intrigue people enough. Right? And every platform has their own things. Those things I would place as third. Then when people click on it, you could say the first 30 seconds. I would say it's your intro and the opening seconds of your first segment. That's with videos. With TikToks, it's your first 5 to 6 seconds. Typically, we see people already tune out in the first 4 seconds, by the way. But 5 seconds is enough. And TikTok or any type of short form content, you see the opening sentence is everything. Right. That's very important. So we have that one that needs to do that. Now, the last part when it comes down to description, SEO, and tags, this is what I'm going to tell you. In most platforms, just ignore them. People talk about hashtags, people talk about tags, people talk about SEO. Most of the times, it's not that important anymore. It's actually so unimportant that I don't remember the last time that I talked to a client about SEO. And I'm not trying to brag, but these are the biggest creators in the world. And we never talk about SEO. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because algorithms are way smarter than this. Algorithms don't just look at, oh, there's a keyword, I'm going to present it to everybody. No, like if it does it like that, it's going to do a very bad job. So platforms have already optimized for this one. So what it does, like some platforms, it looks at how many seconds does somebody engage with the post. So for example, on certain platforms, you want to make a longer text just for the sake of having more seconds on your post. Now, I will tell you is that some platforms look at engagement. And this is something that sometimes I have done this before. I made a text post where in the image, I have all the text. I didn't write the text. I put it in an image. And why? Because the likeness that somebody's going to click on it to read it and like zoom in is higher. But that counts as an engagement. And some platforms, that works like that and some don't. And you have to figure out by platform what it actually cares about. And most of the times, it's interest, engagement, satisfaction. Active engagement, passive engagement, interest, like do they seem like they are reading it or not? Do they interact with it? Do they click on it? And satisfaction, the next time they see a post of yours, do they re-engage or not? Those kind of things we want to think about. But most of the times, SEO on YouTube, like YouTube specifically, I can tell you, screw SEO. Doesn't matter. Like, if you're going to pursue SEO rather than keyword potential, you're going to fail. Right? So that's that. Those are some pieces of advice. And I believe that we've gone through most of the questions, unless I've missed something. Okay, I don't believe I missed anything. Okay. So in this case, I wanna encourage you to think about all those things. And let me think about one cool insight that you can walk away with. Right. So a peak end rule. Let's talk about attention spans. So I need 1 minute from your time to talk about attention spans. People say, and so this is a little bit of a reveal, right? Because we've done a lot of research in my company, and we found something that isn't true about attention spans. And the answer about attention spans, sorry, I'm seeing here. You see, I'm keeping you in suspense, and it works. The thing about attention span is this. People say that it's shortening, and I can tell you it's not true. You can do this research yourself right now. But I've got a team that looked at it. I've looked at it myself. If you look at the Microsoft experiment with the goldfish, like we have the attention span shorter than goldfish, it's not true. There's too many elements factors. What it is this. Attention spans aren't shortening. What it is that our ability to differentiate good from bad content is improving. And because we have so much options, we are able to click out and go away so fast. And we can see this. And people say, oh, kids, their attention span are ruined now. I make content for kids 8 to 12-year-olds. Right. Now we got a Minecraft channel. And I can tell you, these kids can watch 2 minutes in a row without tuning out. That's not possible if attention span is generally shortening. It all depends. Are you delivering on the content? Are you making the viewer excited enough? Because when a viewer is motivated enough, they know it's going to be good content. They're going to engage as long as it's needed. So attention spans aren't shortening. And I want you to think about that one. So don't make shorter content for the sake of attention spans are shortening. Make shorter content because you cannot deliver more good content in a longer time frame. Right? So that's something to walk away with. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Thank you for giving me your time and listening to what I'm passionate about, which is everything related to audiences. And hopefully it inspires you to also think differently about the audience instead of just your quick SEO tips or anything to try to grow an audience, which hasn't been proven to work as much as just focusing on what the audience wants. All right.